Well, One South Africa movement has unveiled the list of 10 municipalities that it plans to contest in the upcoming local government elections scheduled for October. The municipalities are spread across the provinces. Joining us now to explain the selection strategy is One South Africa movement leader, Mmusi Maimane. Good afternoon to you and thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon and thank you so much for having me, and good afternoon to fellow South Africans.
Well, talk us through this idea of working with independent candidates instead of party members. Why go this route?
Well, I think it's absolutely important to remind ourselves that we live in a country where politicians don't listen to people. They don't do what the people ask them to do. They only come to them for votes. And so what we've asked to do is to say, in partnership with associations and communities, we can set up organizations that can contest local government elections. And the first 10 municipalities that we announced, we've been able to get associations that have a coalition of independents that will stand for that election in that locale. This way, it ensures that we give effect to the Concord judgment. Secondly, we give power back to the people to ensure that citizens themselves directly vote for people and hold them accountable. And thirdly, we ensure that when we come to issues of service delivery, people have always got someone that they can have recourse with. They can be able to hold someone accountable to make sure there's water, there's electricity, there are basic services being delivered to them.
And when it comes to these 10 municipalities that you've eyed, what criteria did you use to target them?
Crucially, we look for leadership that is sponsored by the community, that works for the community. Secondly, we look for an association that is credible, that can produce ethical leadership. Thirdly, we look at the state of the municipality where there's potential for you to turn it around. And we are still on the hunt for more municipalities, because I believe when more people gain confidence in the fact that democracy means they themselves can be able to have power, and power will always be to the people, we will be getting into more municipalities. So we are engaged with conversations with people in Tshwane, in various different parts, in KZN, so that we can achieve an infrastructure where across the country where there are credible leaders, credible organizations, a resource, we can work with those people to ensure that they can win an election.
You've mentioned credibility, and accountability as well. What do you think these independent candidates will be doing differently to what the ANC and the DA or the EFF have done in these municipalities?
Well, I think that's a very important distinction. The first thing is that when you work for a political party, you're no longer interested in the people. You are interested in the political party. So if the political party says to you, you will vote in this way, you will vote in that way. If it says to you, you will protect the corrupt, you will protect the corrupt. That's what happens. Whereas what we are saying is that with these independents, firstly, they don't all have to be politicians. That's the first key distinction. Because you can work with people, leaders from civic society, leaders from business, labor, various formations. Secondly, we've made it possible that the community can hold them accountable, so that the person doesn't get voted in and then leave to go work or live somewhere else while services deliveries are falling apart. They must remain in the community, and the community itself has the right not only to elect them, but to recall them. Thirdly, we have want to set up performance contracts with these municipalities and 15A organizations to say to them, you've got to ensure that the following competencies are met, that the community is met, that service delivery is advanced, and that ultimately if the person fails to do so, they can be recalled without having to wait for the party's disciplinary actions, some national process. You deal with it right at source to ensure that you eradicate corruption and you raise ethics in leadership. That is a key distinction between what is a movement is and what political parties seek to do.
And can you confirm as well that the Independent Candidates Association of South Africa will actually be formed this month?
It has been, because we move on to a space where we say, like you have the Health Professionals Council or anything, you can actually have an association across the country that can hold independents together. Because people who are independent are people who must be located in their communities. And if you will recall, we are launching this also in preparation for 2024, where ultimately we believe that the electoral law must be reformed to allow for individuals and independents to be able to stand countrywide for parliament. And if we get the association right, we could really ensure that we get people who are non-racial, who are ethical, who are not corrupt, who will work for an inclusive economy, and ultimately ensure that services are delivered to citizens. That is this journey, and the association will seek to achieve that, which will be established by this month.
So what does the leadership structure then of this association look like, and who decides exactly how it's going to be run? You've mentioned some of the ethics and the rules that will guide the association.
Correct. The power behind it is that because it's a movement, we've been able to attract people from business, civil society, the media, the various constituencies of our society, people from the judiciary, to ensure that they formulate a structure. We want the structure to remain independent of politics, that it is indeed citizen-led. So ultimately, in the executive, people will sit there. As One South Africa movement, we simply have just been putting the foundations on the table so that more and more people can do this in their communities. And my job is really to advance the cause of power to the people, and that ultimately citizens know that democracy belongs to them. So our job is to establish the association and make sure that communities can own it, that it is truly independent of politics, and it is primarily focused on nothing else but the achievement of the promise that the people who get elected make to the citizens.
And just considering the elections coming up in October on the 27th, are you confident that all of these independent candidates will have enough time to garner enough voter support?
I believe in the preliminary selection, what we are starting to see is that these are people who have already been working in their communities. Again, we are not coming out to take a candidate who comes from nowhere, put them in a community and say to them, now you will represent this community. They don't know what happens in Dobsonville. They don't know what happens in Ekurhuleni, Mfuleni. You need people in there who are already been active. And what I'm saying is active citizenry is not a new thing. There are people doing it. There are people doing more than the current political councillors, because the political councillors are just interested in the next leadership election. That's all they're worried about. Whereas we want citizens who have already been doing work. So my confidence is not in the fact that these people, they are popular by their works. You know, the famous saying that says, Umuntu mbona ngezenzo. What we are saying is that these people have been seen by their deeds, and therefore we are confident that they'll be able to do it. And lastly, I think we're living in a country right now where we are all really frustrated by the body politic. I think for most people, they know they haven't got a job, they haven't got services, they have got no water, no electricity, and no vaccines. So what is the confidence in political parties? What is our government in fact doing? So if it's not doing anything, let's ultimately give power back to the people so that those people can do the work that is supposed to be done.
We leave it there for this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. One South Africa movement leader, Mmusi Maimane, there just encouraging citizen leadership.